The smell of burnt toast and expensive perfume is a strange combination to wake up to on a Tuesday. My name is Julian. For 10 years, I believed I was the architect of a stable life, a husband to Clara, a father to our 7-year-old, Leo, and a man who knew exactly where the floorboards creaked in our suburban home. But that morning, the light hit the hallway mirror at an angle that felt wrong. Clara was standing there, her back to me, fastening a necklace I didn't recognize. It was a delicate gold chain with a small, teardrop emerald. I stood in the doorway, the cool morning air raising goosebumps on my arms. "New jewelry?" I asked, my voice still thick with sleep. She flinched. It was a micro-movement, a sharp intake of breath followed by a sudden rigidity in her shoulders. "This? No, Jules. I've had this for years. I just found it in the back of the drawer." She didn't turn around. She watched my reflection in the glass, her eyes darting toward my hands as if checking for a weapon or a suitcase. "It's pretty," I said, stepping closer. The scent of her perfume, something floral but heavy, like lilies in a closed room, felt suffocating. "I don't remember it." "You don't remember a lot of things lately, Julian. You've been so buried in those blueprints," she snapped, finally turning. Her smile was a curated masterpiece, bright and shallow. She kissed my cheek, her lips cold. "I have a late meeting tonight. Don't wait up for dinner. I've asked my sister, Sarah, to pick up Leo from soccer." She was out the door before I could mention that Leo didn't have soccer on Tuesdays. He had it on Wednesdays. As I watched her car pull out of the driveway, the silence of the house felt heavy, like a lung filling with water. I walked to the kitchen and looked at the calendar. Leo's soccer was clearly marked for Wednesday. Then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, Clara's sister. "Hey Julian, Clara said you needed me to watch Leo tonight because you're taking her on a surprise date. So romantic. I'll pick him up at 5. The world didn't tilt, it flattened. Clara told me she was working late. She told Sarah I was taking her out. 2 different lies, woven together to create a window of time where she belonged to no one, or someone else. In this opening sequence, we witness the violent collision between Julian's internal map of his marriage and the external landscape of Clara's deception. Julian's reality is built on the expectation of domestic predictability. He measures his world through soccer schedules and familiar jewelry. The reality, however, is that he has been living in a curated environment. Clara's flinch and her micro-movements are physiological leaks of her hidden reality. The emerald necklace serves as a physical manifestation of the hidden life, an object that exists outside Julian's authorized history of their marriage. Psychologically, Julian is entering the first stage of trauma, hypervigilance. The realization that Clara has coordinated 2 conflicting lies shows a level of premeditated manipulation that shatters the illusion of the accidental mistake. He expected a partner who shared his timeline, but he is realizing he is married to a strategist who is playing a different game entirely. The emotional awakening here is quiet but devastating. It isn't the presence of a lie that breaks him, but the effortless, practiced grace with which Clara delivers it. The next few days were a masterclass in the mundane. I am a man of details. My job as an architect requires me to see the stress fractures before the building falls. I started looking for them everywhere. At dinner, Clara's phone sat face down on the granite countertop. It was a new habit. For years, her phone had been a communal object, used by Leo for games or by me to check the weather. Now, it was a black monolith, guarded with a silent, fierce intensity. Whenever it vibrated, she would cover it with her hand, a gesture as instinctive as a bird protecting a nest. "Leo, eat your peas," she said, her voice melodic. She looked perfect. She always looked perfect. But I noticed the way her thumb traced the edge of the phone, a rhythmic, nervous tick. "Sarah mentioned that the surprise date was off," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. I kept my eyes on my plate, cutting my steak into perfectly even squares. I told her I had to stay late at the office instead. Clara didn't skip a beat. Oh, right. I felt so bad about that. I must have confused the days when I talked to her. My head has been in the clouds with this new marketing campaign. I looked up. The light from the pendant lamp over the table cast shadows under her eyes. Who is the client again? The one requiring all these late nights? A firm from out of town. Vanguard Solutions, she said. She reached for the wine, her movements fluid. The name sounded fake. It sounded like something a person says when they need a word that implies important, but means nothing. Later that night, while Clara was in the shower, I did something I had never done in 10 years. I searched her laptop history. There was no Vanguard Solutions. But there was a recurring search for a boutique hotel downtown, the Obsidian. And then there was the laundry. I found a receipt in her coat pocket for a dry cleaner on the other side of the city. We have a dry cleaner 2 blocks away. When I picked up the coat, the air in the shop was hot and smelled of steam and chemicals. The woman behind the counter smiled at me. Ah, for Mrs. Thorne. Your husband was just here dropping off more things yesterday. My breath hitched. My husband? Yes, tall gentleman, dark hair. He seemed in a rush. I took the coat and walked out into the bright, unforgiving sunlight. I don't have dark hair. I am fair-haired and shorter than tall. The red herrings were starting to form a web. Was Sarah in on it? Was this tall man actually a colleague? Or was I finally seeing the man who had moved into the spaces I had left vacant? Clara's behavior, face-down phone, tactile guarding, and the Vanguard lie, illustrates the double life syndrome. She is maintaining a facade of the perfect mother/wife, while her true emotional investment has migrated. Her use of gaslighting, telling Julian he doesn't remember things, is a defense mechanism intended to make him doubt his own perceptions so she can continue her activities unhindered. Julian, meanwhile, is experiencing cognitive dissonance. He wants to trust his wife, but his professional training as an architect makes it impossible for him to ignore the stress fractures. His decision to search the laptop marks a pivotal psychological shift. He has moved from husband to investigator. This change is permanent. The dry cleaner's comment about a husband with dark hair introduces a devastating psychological blow, the replacement identity. The stranger isn't just an interloper. In the eyes of the world Clara has built, this stranger is the husband. This triggers a deep identity crisis in Julian, as he realizes his social and marital role is being actively usurped in spaces he didn't even know existed. The suspicion grew like mold behind a pristine wall, unseen but toxic. I started noticing the fictitious identities Clara was creating for her time. She'd mention a friend named Marta from work, but when I called the office under the guise of a surprise lunch delivery, I was told there was no Marta in her department. One afternoon, I followed her. I felt like a cliché, a man in a nondescript SUV trailing his wife's silver sedan through the rain-slicked streets. She didn't go to work. She went to a small, upscale cafe in a neighborhood we never frequented. I watched from across the street, the wipers on my car rhythmically clearing the glass. She met a woman. Not a man. The woman was older, elegant, and they talked with an intensity that looked like a business deal rather than an affair. They exchanged a thick manila envelope. My mind raced. Was this financial? Was she hiding money? Was she involved in something illegal? This was the first major red herring. I felt a surge of relief that was quickly replaced by a different kind of dread. Maybe it wasn't a man. Maybe it was something that could ruin our family's future in a different way. When Clara came home that night, she was humming. She seemed lighter than she had in weeks. Good day at work? I asked, watching her from the couch. Leo was upstairs, the faint sound of his video games drifting down. Productive, she said. She leaned over and kissed the top of my head. She smelled like that cafe, roasted beans and expensive leather. I think the Vanguard project is finally coming to a close. I waited for her to mention the woman or the envelope. She didn't. Instead, she went to the kitchen and started making Leo's school lunch with a terrifyingly normal efficiency. That night, I waited until she was asleep. I checked her car. Tucked deep under the passenger seat was the manila envelope. My heart was a drum in my ears. I opened it, expecting bank statements or legal papers. Instead, it was a collection of photographs. Photos of me. Photos of me at the grocery store. Me picking up Leo from school. Me sitting in my office. And in every photo, there was a red circle around my watch, a vintage Rolex that had been passed down from my grandfather. I sat in the dark of the garage, the cold air biting at my skin. Why was she having me followed? Why was she showing my movements to a stranger? The mystery wasn't just about another man anymore, it was about a betrayal of my very safety. I realized then that I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being hunted within my own life. Here the introduction of the older woman and the manila envelope serves as a brilliant psychological redirection. We see the conflict through the lens of Clara's calculated external alliances. Her behavior suggests she isn't just seeking emotional fulfillment, she is conducting a strategic deconstruction of Julian's life. The revelation of the photographs shifts the narrative from a simple affair to a predatory betrayal. Psychologically, this is the betrayal of sanctuary. A home is supposed to be the one place where one is not watched, yet Clara has turned Julian's private life into evidence. The use of the red circles around his watch suggests a financial motive. Perhaps she is documenting assets for a ruthless divorce, or worse, coordinating with someone to strip him of his heritage. This secondary character, the woman in the cafe, exposes a hidden truth: Clara is not acting alone. She has built a shadow cabinet of advisors to help her exit the marriage with maximum gain. Julian's relief at not seeing a man is a classic example of relative pain. He is so afraid of the affair that he initially overlooks the much more dangerous threat of a calculated, cold-blooded betrayal of his entire existence. The photographs changed the game. I realized that if she was documenting me, I had to document her twice as hard. I hired my own professional, not a private investigator, but a forensic accountant. If Clara was meeting mysterious women and circling my assets, the truth was in the money. Your wife has been diverting small amounts for 2 years, the accountant told me over a secure line. It's brilliant, really. 500 here, 300 there. All going into an offshore account registered to a Vanguard Holdings. But there's a second name on the account, Julian. Who? I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. A man named Marcus Thorne. Thorne. My last name. But I don't have a brother named Marcus. My father was an only child. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Clara hadn't just found a lover, she had found someone to become me. I decided to set a trap. I told Clara I had to go to a conference in Chicago for 3 days. I packed a bag, let her see me put it in the car, and even drove to the airport. But I didn't get on the plane. I took an Uber to a rental apartment I'd booked overlooking our street. Day 1, nothing. Clara took Leo to school, went to work, and came home. Day 2, the tall man with dark hair arrived. He pulled into the driveway like he owned the house. He had a key. I watched through binoculars as he entered my home. An hour later, my sister-in-law, Sarah, arrived. I expected her to scream, to call me, to throw him out. Instead, she hugged him. She laughed as he handed her a bottle of wine. They were all in on it. My wife, her sister, and this Marcus. They sat on my porch, drinking my wine, while my son played in the backyard. The level of hidden alliances was staggering. Sarah, the person I had trusted with my son's safety, was a co-conspirator in my erasure. I saw Clara lean into the man, her head on his shoulder. It wasn't just a physical affair, it was a total replacement. They were practicing being a family in the house I paid for, using the name I gave her. The red herrings of the previous weeks, the cafe woman, the photographs, it was all about the swap. They were documenting my habits so he could step into my life seamlessly during a planned, high-conflict divorce where I would be painted as the unstable, absent father. The chain of causality in this block is a terrifying descent from financial secrecy to total social displacement. The cause was Julian's initial career-focused neglect, which provided the effect of a vacuum that Clara chose to fill not just with a person, but with a structural replacement. The discovery of the offshore account and the name Marcus Thorne illustrates a premeditated exit strategy. Psychologically, Clara is practicing identity erasure. By involving her sister, Sarah, she has created a social fortification. This is a classic move in high-conflict betrayals, isolating the victim by turning their support system against them before the victim even knows there is a conflict. The effect on Julian is a total, ontological shock. His world isn't just breaking, it is being stolen. The binoculars represent his new psychological state, the exiled observer. He is a ghost in his own life, watching his replacement perform his roles. The lesson here is that betrayal is rarely an isolated act, it is often a consensual hallucination shared by a group, Clara, Sarah, Marcus, who have dehumanized the victim to justify their actions. Each glass of wine they share on the porch is a consequence of Julian's long-term emotional absence, which Clara used as the moral justification for her chain reaction of lies. I didn't wait for 3 days. I walked through the front door while they were still in the kitchen. The silence that followed the click of the lock was absolute. Sarah was the first to look up. Her face went from a smile to a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. The man, Marcus, stood up slowly. Up close, the resemblance was haunting. He was dressed in my clothes. My favorite cashmere sweater. Clara stood by the stove, a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at me with a cold, weary disappointment. "You were supposed to be in Chicago, Julian," she said. Her voice was flat, like a judge reading a sentence. "Who is he, Clara?" I asked. My voice was surprisingly steady. I felt a strange, icy calm. "And why is Sarah helping you bury me?" Sarah started to stammer. "Julian, it's not, we were just worried about you. You've been so distant. We thought." "Shut up, Sarah," I said. I looked at Marcus. "And you? Take off my sweater. Now." Marcus looked at Clara, seeking instruction. That was the tell. He wasn't the alpha, he was a tool. "This is Marcus," Clara said, stepping forward. "He's a consultant. And he's been more of a father to Leo in the last 6 months than you've been in 3 years. We're filing for a domestic displacement. Sarah has already signed the affidavit regarding your erratic behavior and your frequent disappearances." The secondary twist hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just having an affair, they were building a legal case to have me declared unfit, using my own investigation against me. Every time I had followed her, every time I had stayed out late to watch the house, they had been documenting me as the stalker. "I have the offshore records, Clara," I said, holding up my phone. "I have the photos of the Vanguard account. And I have the recording of the dry cleaner identifying Mr. Thorne, a man who isn't me. You didn't just cheat. You committed fraud." The mask finally broke. Clara's face contorted into something ugly, a mixture of rage and panic. She threw her wine glass. It shattered against the wall behind my head, red liquid weeping down the white paint like a fresh wound. "I gave you 10 years, she shrieked. 10 years of being a perfect architect's wife. I deserved a life that wasn't just a blueprint." "You had a life," I said, looking at the wreckage of my kitchen. "Now, you just have a crime scene. This climax is the ultimate explosion of repressed rage and calculated malice." Clara's action, throwing the wine glass, is the physical release of years of performance fatigue. Psychologically, she has transitioned from the deceiver to the aggressor. Her justification, "I deserved a life," is a classic example of moral decoupling, where the perpetrator separates their harmful actions from their self-image by blaming the victim's perceived inadequacies. Julian's icy calm is a survival mechanism, emotional blunting. In the face of a total social coup, his brain has shifted into a purely tactical mode. The confrontation reveals the stages of betrayal. The affair was merely the gateway to the hostile takeover. The psychological tension here is driven by the power flip. Clara believed she held all the cards because she had weaponized the legal system and Julian's own family, Sarah. However, Julian's action of hiring a forensic accountant, intellectual defense, neutralized her action of social manipulation, emotional offense. The micro-expression of Marcus looking to Clara for instruction reveals the subplot of the affair. It wasn't built on love, but on a contractual arrangement where Marcus was a pawn in Clara's war. The resolution of this block is the death of all ambiguity. The husband and wife roles are gone, replaced by plaintiff and defendant. The divorce was a bloodbath, but a short one. When faced with the threat of identity theft and financial fraud charges, Clara's shadow cabinet crumbled. Sarah, ever the coward, flipped first. "She gave my lawyers everything in exchange for not being named as an accomplice in the fraud." Clara moved to another state with Marcus. "From what I hear, the aliveness she felt with him didn't survive the reality of a shared apartment and no access to my bank account. They broke up 6 months later. I kept the house. I had the walls repainted, no more white, no more perfect architecture. I chose deep blues and warm woods. I changed the locks, of course, but more importantly, I changed my life. Leo and I have a new routine. On Tuesdays, we don't go to soccer. We go to the park and we talk. I stopped looking at life as a blueprint and started looking at it as a garden, something that needs constant, messy tending, not just a static design." One evening, I found that emerald necklace in a box of things Sarah had returned. I looked at it for a long time. It wasn't a symbol of Clara's beauty anymore. It was a reminder that people are only as whole as the secrets they keep. I walked down to the pier and threw it into the dark water. I didn't feel a surge of triumph. I just felt light. The chapter was over, but life moved on quietly. I learned that you can't build a house on a foundation of lies, no matter how beautiful the blueprints are. But you can rebuild on the ruins, as long as you're willing to clear away the rubble with your own 2 hands. I realized that trust can break, but resilience can rebuild. I am no longer the man who lived in a hall of mirrors. I am just a man, standing in the sun, watching my son run across the grass. And for the first time in years, the air smells like nothing but the coming rain. Would you have seen the signs, or would you have stayed blind to keep the perfect dream alive? The narrative arc of Julian and Clara is a profound exploration of the parasitic betrayal, a form of infidelity where the goal is not just a new partner, but the total extraction of the spouse's resources and identity. The story moves from a domestic mystery into a high-stakes psychological thriller, reflecting how quickly ordinary life can be weaponized in the hands of a determined narcissist. The cumulative lesson here is the architecture of awareness. Julian's growth comes from his painful transition from a man who values structure to a man who values presence. He realizes that his own emotional absence provided the soil in which Clara's deception grew, though it did not justify her actions. The betrayal acted as a radical deconstruction. It destroyed the false Julian, the blueprint man, so the authentic Julian, the present father, could emerge. Clara's character serves as a study in compensatory grandiosity. Her affair and subsequent fraud were attempts to reclaim a sense of power she felt she had lost. The emotional closure of the story is found in Julian's radical acceptance. By throwing the necklace away, he isn't just discarding a piece of jewelry, he is discarding the investigator persona and the victim narrative. He chooses empowerment over resentment. In the end, the story posits a universal insight: betrayal is a mirror. It shows us not just the darkness in the person we loved, but the cracks in our own perception. True resilience is the ability to look at those cracks and, instead of trying to hide them, using them to see the world more clearly than ever before. For Julian, the perfect home was a prison, the ruined life was his first real taste of freedom.